one, it really comes down to like leadership, right? The person that is driving the business, the leadership. Because if you have the right person and the leader and the right vision, then they know how to actually build the team around it to make the business successful, right? And then having the right team is like you got the right finance guy. So like let's look at what the metrics are and know that if we have a product that's not working right now, we know at least I have the right team around me to know that it's not working right now, that we need to adapt and evolve as quickly as possible. And I think one, if you have somebody with maybe a little bit of an ego or something that, they're trying to like, they're in business to make money, not to solve a problem, right? We both know that like you need to be in business to solve a problem, and money and profit is just a byproduct of doing that really well.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the None of Your Business podcast. And boy, are you in for a real treat today. We have somebody that is basically an expert in two fields of interest, but they're not necessarily related fields. And so it is actually my obligation to get them to unpack probably what they consider to be the boring field, but that you probably are all like, oh my gosh, I hope that they spend the entire time talking about this, which happens to be finance. And then the other side, he is an absolute expert at helping people to create, launch, grow, scale, and then eventually exit from their e-commerce business. And that's pretty exciting too, because I know so many of you probably late at night dream of this idea of maybe I could get into creating my own line, or maybe you don't even have to create your own line. Maybe you could sell supplements or something that you want to sell, but you're not really sure how to do it. And I get it. You are a service provider. You've made your living inside, the four walls of your brick and mortar, and you've done very well. But you dream of maybe having that freedom to not necessarily have to show up every single day in order to get that revenue or create that profit margin for yourselves. So let's bring in today's expert, Greg Wilson. He is the man of all things finance and e-commerce. We're going to break it down into two parts. But Greg, we always begin every single podcast with the exact same question. Definitely today, beyond a shadow of a doubt, when we start to hear you converse, when we start getting deep into some of these topics, it's easy for people to be like, yeah, of course, Greg, probably because he has a background as a CPA, then he just parlayed that because it was just so natural right into the e-commerce world, probably caught a few breaks, probably knows some high ups over at Alibaba and Amazon, bing, bang, boom. Now he's over here on the podcast telling us how to do it. What we've realized is that very infrequently, if ever, is that actually the case. So let's open up with you telling us a little bit about your journey. So you start out as a CPA and maybe whatever you were doing before that, and then how you've managed to parlay that into your expertise today in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, definitely. Shawn, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So, great intro. And, really I started my career in college interested in business. I really wanted to start my own business, and I had gotten into taking some accounting and finance classes, and next thing kind of led to the next. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Let's pursue this. I know I can make a career in finance. Didn't necessarily take the traditional route of going into tax or big corporate accounting. I had found a little niche in consulting and helping like small and mid-sized businesses, just really on like kind of like a bookkeeping and accounting manager level. And it was pretty boring, right? And just trying to grasp how the numbers work, how accounting works, how businesses work. And what was really valuable there was I got exposure to hundreds of different types of businesses, everything from like hair salons to major manufacturing companies with massive inventory problems, right? And so that had kind of evolved in like my career and kind of personal journey of not really loving accounting, but what do I actually love about this? And it really came into, I really loved relationships. I really loved business and really liked helping people. And so through that journey, I've now had, as a partner in kind of a regional firm that I then built an office out in Colorado for a few years, doing the same thing. I actually had like a strict focus really on cannabis and in that realm, kind of during the quote unquote green rush, which was a very challenging regulated industry in itself. And that kind of branched to me doing some other things, personal discovery and what I really love, and some things in the outdoors until I really found like a niche in e-commerce, health and wellness, which is very important to me, and sports, right? And so those are kind of my three niches. And I had then partnered up with a good buddy of mine, Wes, who's the founder of Precision Financial. And now we've got about 35 employees, and we're really just helping people on their journey to become successful entrepreneurs and business people. And like we really pride ourselves that if you work with us, like your chances of surviving as a business are much higher because we have the connections, we have the metrics, we know how businesses are driven, we know how to raise capital and make sure that you keep your business safe, especially in like crazy times right now. It's just so uncertain. So,
One of my favorite books, question that sometimes when I'm on a podcast gets asked, what is your favorite business book? Um, One of my favorite business books is a book called Predictable Success by Les McEwen.
oh,
And Les McEwen got his start as an accountant. And this is interesting
mhm.
because the premise of the book is look, as an accountant, I was working with tons of small businesses. Some of my clients did very well, and some of them didn't. And so, through the lens of a CPA, let me look at and see why some of these succeed and some of these fail. I would
Mhm.
love to get your take, obviously, with zero prep, but you've seen, right? You've seen this, right? All kinds of
Yeah,
small
yeah.
businesses that you've worked with. Some of them make it, some of them don't. Are there any things that you can begin to see that you're like, wow, you know what? The ones that make it do this, and the ones that don't make it, they have these other traits in common. Anything through your lens that you see?
Oh man, I'm like that's such an awesome question because that is something that I look at every single business that I've worked with to try to figure out like what makes this thing work and why is it not working, right? And it's not I'm a finance guy. I like numbers, numbers don't lie, right? We can tell a story with the numbers, but really like it really comes down to like leadership, right? The person that is driving the business, the leadership, because if you have the right person in the leader and the right vision, then they know how to actually build the team around it to make the business successful, right? And then having the right team is like you got the right finance guy, so like let's look at what the metrics are and know that if we have a product that's not working right now, we know at least I have the right team around me to know that it's not working right now, that we need to adapt and evolve as quickly as possible. And I think one, if you have somebody with maybe a little bit of an ego or something that, they're trying to like they're in business to make money, not to solve a problem, right? We both know that like you need to be in business to solve a problem, and money and profit is just a byproduct of doing that really well, right? And you don't have a business if you're not making money, right? And I mean, a caveat to that, unless you're like a public company that never makes money and just has ultimate, unlimited funding, which like if we're starting a small business, like you need to have profitability and cash flow on your mind, right? And so really it starts with the person and the leadership, and then it's building that team around you to really set yourself up for success. And finance being one of those big pillars. And for a long time, I was like, it's about the numbers all the time, and like I have a business right now that I'm working with where we actually focused too much on the numbers. The business is very profitable right now, but now we have internal like issues with the operations team and conflicts in the HR piece, which is like now it's the culture is starting to shift, right? So it's this awareness of everything that's going on, putting the ego at the side, building the right team around you is probably the number one thing I see that's going to make a business successful.
Well, we're I love the answer. Well, there's a fine line there, I believe, and I'm going to ask you to define
Yeah,
that line for me because
sure.
um, I love to just think as you're speaking what our listeners are saying, and I already know some of our listeners are like, "Great, thanks, Greg." That's exactly why I'm not about the numbers. Like you're the numbers guy, um, and it's easy. What I've noticed just in personal behavior, people that have a difficult time with money. So, I mean, and that's probably most of us when we were young, right? You
Hmm.
don't want to be connected to your checking account. If I ask you, what's your checking account balance? You're like, low. And you just, live off your debit card until one day they're like, nope, insufficient funds. And you're like, shoot, you wait for whatever the next student loan check or next paycheck. It replenishes when we go out and we do it again. But I see lots of business owners doing that. When things are rough, we disconnect from the finances.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
people that do well, I've noticed that almost all of them are highly connected to their finances. And it's easy for me to
Yes.
think like, well, that's because you're doing well. Of course, if I had 21 million in the bank, I'd be connected to it too. But you are like, yeah, that it's the numbers don't lie, but there's this fine line. Speak to us about that. Like, as a principal,
Hmm.
how connected do I need to be to the finances? Or is it as simple as I just hire myself a you and I'm like, yeah, Greg's got it. I don't worry about that stuff.
No, so like part of this too is like I'm building this course, right? The Rapid Revenue Blueprint for e-commerce businesses that gives business owners the fundamental principles that are critical on the finance side you need to understand. I've worked with plenty of business owners that are very finance savvy and they're almost too finance savvy, right? And then I have other people that say, "Oh, my CFO's got it, no problem." But then you don't listen to anything that I'm saying because you don't actually understand and grasp the importance of it and why it's important. So, I like e-commerce because it's very like metric driven and we can kind of tweak things and things like that. But any given business, and even in like a chiropractor or a doctor's office or things like that, it's actually a little bit easier because you don't have inventory and things like that. But you need to know what those metrics are and what they mean, and you need to know what the benchmark standards are in your industry that makes businesses successful for you. So, and every every industry has a business that is successful, so you need to go find that person, right, or something similar to that, and figure out what they're doing that you're not. Your overhead expenses are too high, you're not generating enough revenue right now, and find where and benchmark yourself against what's most important to driving your business to success. So having the fundamental knowledge of, like, it's crazy to me, even e-commerce business owners that still don't understand the concept of like cost of goods sold and inventory and how that actually works, right? They think when they buy inventory it's an expense, but it's not. It's an asset that you hold on to until you sell it, and then it is an expense. So like understanding that concept is very critical of actually being successful. And understanding really the difference when finance the lack of finance education in general is just terrible. Like, nobody ever taught me how to make a budget. I've asked people this of like, did you learn how to make a budget in school? Like, personally, no, nobody learned that, right? I should make a course just like, here's how to build a budget, right? I've helped my like 35-year-old friends build a budget for themselves personally. And so those, like, and that's how we kind of run, like, even if you do know how to build a budget, that's kind of how you run your life. But like, you can't just be cash in, cash out all the time, because cash in, cash out, whatever's left, it doesn't equal profitability in your business. It could be, there's timing issues, right? So, it's something we really try to understand. Where's the timing issues? Where's this thing actually headed? We want to build a crystal ball for the future. And we do that through what has happened, what are the metrics that drive this thing, what are the metrics that we need to hit, and what does that crystal ball look like in the future? And can we get there? Right? And start understanding it from like purely like a unit economic standpoint of one sale, and what's the cost of this one sale. Does this make sense, and can I scale it, and what's the cost to scale it? Because if that one, at the single unit level, if it does not make sense, you should not do it, right? And I've had people try to build 10 or $100 million businesses off of businesses that have bad unit economics. So it's understanding those fundamentals. So maybe I went on a little bit too much there, but
No,
that's
no, that's super good, and I know for the listeners, like this is so critical. There's just two camps, right? The ones that are like, oh my God, keep going, right? Like, what are the key metrics? Then there's the other camp that are like, listen, can we start talking about the e-commerce side? I'm just trying to figure out how I can make a ton of money here. And I want to point out to everybody, like, you need to know your numbers. I can't tell you, for me, in consulting with service providers, how many people are super disconnected from the
Mhm.
finances. So at the very least, and Greg is not here to solicit clients for the accounting side of his business. He's over capacity already, but at the very least, you need to reach out to people like Greg because you need to understand what's out there. And so many of you are just disconnected. I will also, though, because you are not soliciting, because you already told me, like, look, I'm good. We're the firm is full of clients. One of the things that I realize and recognize too is that, man, is it hard to find a good accounting firm slash CPA to work with. Because
Mhm.
one, they're a dime a dozen, right? So typically we're out at our local BNI group, networking group, and somebody's handing us a card, but that person probably doesn't have the level of expertise as you do. From your point of view, I don't think I've ever asked a CPA this. From your point of view, what makes a great accountant to work with? If you were hiring one for yourself, what would you be looking for?
Yeah. So typical CPAs breed a certain personality, right? Boring, not very like kind of non-communicative, right? I'll call you a week before the tax deadline and say that you owe 300,000 in taxes, and by the way, sorry, right? Like that doesn't fly for me or my clients, right? And so like there's a reason we kind of cap at the people that we work with because we want to serve them at the highest level. And a lot of like, and we're not a tax shop. We don't just crank out tax returns. We outsource most of that stuff. So and that's because we don't want to get jammed up during these tax times when I'm trying to do like real like value add work to help people grow their businesses. And we don't want to be distracted with that. But finding, a compliance, a tax person, it's really really tough. I have like two that I go to. One is for like my super high net worth clients that need some really big tax strategies, and I kind of have one that's more like mom and pop shops. And I trust them. I know that they work really well. But to answer your question of what do you need to look for is like you need to look for somebody that you can actually like communicate and build a relationship with and have some like real tax strategy type meetings on them, right? Unless you're just a really small business right now and you're like, I just need my tax returns done. That's it. Like you can find somebody to do that. But it's a stat like the tax code is so complicated. Like if you gave like they did a study and I'm going to botch this completely, but it was like they gave like the same like books and records to like four different CPAs and they all came up with like different tax liabilities. So like you want to find the person that you can trust and that you can like give the right you give the right information to. Like obviously there's people that want to play a little bit more on the aggressive and the gray area. So finding somebody that kind of matches your personality type, like we like to push it a little bit within the right boundaries, and we like to help our clients out as much as possible. Nobody really likes paying tax. So like how do we find people that really want to strategize with that and do things do things appropriately. So but it's a hard question to answer because it's like it's tough, right? And whenever anybody asks me for a CPA, I do my best to try to like pair them with like the right person to do that. But the big thing I can say is like if you have like zero communication with your CPA until like the day before your taxes are due, like go find somebody else and just let them know like that's important. I want to, and you'll pay more for it, but pay more for it. Like, hey, I want a tax strategy meeting in November. Like, I just need to know like what's going on because you can't do anything once the year's over. Like we implement strategies that save clients millions of dollars. Like because we're talking about it in November. So if tax liability is your issue or whatever your issue is, like you got to be proactive about it and find somebody who is proactive.
Perfect. Let's jump into the e-commerce side. So
Sure.
many service providers that I work with, like we said in the introduction, dream of this. Let's start off with, if we were talking about a dentist, a dermatologist, nutritionists that they see the possibility, but they just have no idea where to start. Like, let's just
Hmm.
start with super basics for somebody who might be scared, who might say, "Oh, I
For
know
sure.
about it, but I'm not. What do I do? I'm not going to just start selling these out of my kitchen." Although maybe they should do that. Like, so I'd love to hear where would you direct us who see the potential, the possibility, but just literally have no idea where to start.
Yeah, the first thing you really want to think about is what's your differentiator in the market, right? If you're going to go supplements, and I have supplement company that I worked with, we grew them from 8 million to over 100 million in 18 months, and now they're doing $250,000 in revenue with like several different brands underneath them. And their one differentiator was they found some like very like celebrity type people, and they got them on board. They paid them a lot of money, right? They had them like build the product and formulate something in a good story behind it, why it's different, why you should, why you should be taking this, right? So when you start like, yeah, we all have these like cool ideas of like, oh yeah, I want to start a supplement line. If you just start a supplement line and drop it on Amazon, you're going to make $0 because it's so saturated on Amazon right now. So, what's your differentiator in the market? And even dermatologists I'm working with, we've got skincare line. So we've been really thinking about like what is the differentiator here? And once you think you have something that is different or unique to the market, it doesn't have to be like original, right? You take something and you make it better, right? That's the best kind of business strategy. Is find something that's worked and then just like make it better. Um, and then, from a purely like a finance standpoint, is again, you want to run the unit economics. Like, what is the market saying that this product, like I could sell this at? Is it $100 a bottle? And then do some research on like, what is this thing going to cost me? And all in shipping, all that sort of stuff, everything coming in. And like, actually have like templates and stuff. If anybody wants this, I'm happy to share it with them for free. But it's like, build out what the unit economics looks like for and see if it actually makes sense from the start. Like I was saying, like people have these great ideas, they think it's a great product, they start marketing it, and then they realize it doesn't actually make sense from a profitability standpoint. And then you're screwed because you can't get the cost down, you can't raise the prices because the market's dictating a certain price on it, right? So, you want to start thinking about those sorts of things from the beginning and do the research up front. Do the market research, understand the unit economics, understand what your differentiator is, right? Before you really like just get too excited about it and then blow a bunch of money on inventory or branding or things like that, right? And really in the e-commerce game, once think you have a solid product there, then it becomes a marketing play. And having a really good marketing team behind you, building great content. I have an apparel company that these guys are hilarious. They're all like, Hollywood filmmakers and things like that. So they know how to grasp people's attention through content, right? So like their differentiator is like we make hilarious videos that get people like it's just an apparel company, right? And so getting that right marketing behind you and understanding where you want to go. So, and one other note I'll make on that is like a lot of these direct to consumer e-commerce businesses, you got to understand, are you in it just to make a quick buck? And if you are, great. Like I know people that have sold like dick pills, right? That are highly marketed, that are super low cost, that make a lot of money, right? But it's like it's not a brand, and then it's gone, right? It's just like, but hey, if your idea is you just want to make money off dick pills, go for it, right? But for me, it's more about sustainability and building an actual brand, and that takes a long time, right? So make sure you understand: are you just making money? You just want to make money, or do you actually want to build a brand and build something, right? And it's okay either way, but then you got to know like that's the route I want to go. If you're just trying to make money, find the cheapest product you can and heavily market it and try to get a good hook to grasp people's attention, and make money, but you're going to lose customers over time because your quality is probably crap, right? If you want to build a brand, you got to start building the following, you got to start building the content, you got to start building respect from your customers, you got to start building loyalty, you got to start increasing your customer retention, right? You got to get people behind you, you got to have a movement, right? That takes a long time. But I mean, you look at like Nike, like the best that are at it, like Nike, like there's not, Nike doesn't like, they don't like advertise their shoes, right? They advertise Nike. You're like, oh, it's Nike, it's a lifestyle, right?
So, and I love that you brought that up. Are we just trying to sell dick pills, or are we trying to create a brand? That's super important because I think though underlying in that is one of the big questions, one of the big conundrums for at least this audience, right? So a lot
Mhm.
of our audience has made their living in their brick and mortar, and they've done very well for themselves. And then this is intriguing, and I think, as a first step, let's do, all of this analysis. Let's make sure that we have a product that's viable, and that as a business model, this is going to work. But even before that, there's a little bit of a gap. Well, I guess right after that, there's a little bit of a gap, because I've run into people that have a great idea, and tons of people that have reached out to me for supplements, cosmetic line, CBD type products. But then they like, the one side, when I'm selling dick pills, or maybe I was just selling, something that I was getting off of the internet, bringing it here, marking it up, and then selling it, on my website, because I had, creative marketing, and the margin was built in, and I don't really have anything to do with the thing, right? It was, I never saw it, I never touched it, it just came over. But then the other side is, I'm actually really passionate about this. I want to get really good supplements. I want to create a really good CBD line. um, do you help people to bridge that gap? Like, what do we do if I want to make a skin cream, but I don't know the skin cream people? Like, how do I get into that
Right.
business?
Yeah, and so it's really like a relationship game at that point, right? It's like finding the right people, and like that's what I love doing. I love meeting with new business owners, trying to find the right vendors, find the right suppliers, things like that, in order to help you get to where you want to go. And like you and I are both connected with David Meltzer, and it's like one of the things he says is like the quickest way to get to where you want to go is find somebody and ask for directions, right? So it's like, how can you start to find those people that are in that line? And like honestly, like yes, there's competition with other businesses, but like the thing you'll start to find when you really start talking to people that are like doing business for good is like we all want to help each other out, right? And all just like keep, you keep your trade secrets and things like that. I'm not saying that sort of stuff, but um yeah, I mean it's really about kind of like networking and finding the right people. And if your audience has specific questions or things like that, or vendors, like, I'm happy to help them out. They can always just reach out to me if there's like specific areas. I'll do my best I can. So
Let's talk about some of the pitfalls that you see people having or experiencing once they have solved for the first equation. Now they've solved for the product. Now I'm ready to take this to market, and I'm just excited. Maybe I've invested a ton in marketing. Maybe I've paid a lot of money onto an email list, and we're going to run this. And I'm looking at my phone. I'm waiting for those notifications to start popping up. We hit go, and then tell me some of the surprises that I may not have thought about, that might be some pitfalls that might be stopping my phone from lighting up.
yeah, well, the rookie mistake of all rookie mistakes is you just set up a website and you think they're going to come. You're like, oh, I got the product, everything's good. And then they're like, oh, I actually need to spend $1,000 a day on marketing. Like, where am I going to get that money from? Right. So, set like do the research, set your expectations, and know kind of what you're getting into. You don't just set up a website and drive sales to it. If you're going to do Amazon, Amazon's a different game, right? I've messed around a little bit with Amazon, but my niche is really like people that want to set up their own Shopify store, run how to, learn how to drive content, ads, everything directly to their landing pages, and get people to buy on their website. That's where you're gonna keep a lot of your margin, because Amazon takes such a high margin off your products, and it's all based on like rating systems and things like that. So back to some of the pitfalls is, you know, once people start to get traction, and I'll give you like the one of the biggest pitfalls I saw a lot of these businesses fall into, and I really try to stop a lot of them, as when COVID happened and it was like this e-commerce boom. So much money got flooded into the market. Venture capital had more money than they know what to do with. They were just throwing millions of dollars into these businesses and investing into top line growth and not profitability. So if a business had grown 100% year over year, they're like, oh, this is a great investment, and they would just be easily to be able to get cash. And then what happened is recession hits, money printer stops, interest rates go up, people stop spending. People are no longer just at home buying stuff, and all these e-commerce businesses just went like, oh, all my revenues like just got cut in half. And I had anticipated that this was not going to happen, and I bought way too much inventory, and now all my cash is tied up in inventory. So one of the things I really cover in the course really well is like planning and visibility of what's going to happen in the future, building that crystal ball, like I was telling you, and then managing your inventory cycle very, very closely. And I have a lot of tips and tricks on how to actually do that and how to build negotiations with your vendors and, pay later, how to use credit cards and, use that to your advantage. But really you want to shorten the time frame, which will shorten the risk in your business from when you order the product to when you sell it. Right. And in some cases, if we're lucky, we actually can sell it before we have to pay it for it and buy it, right? There's just a few circumstances, but if you can get into a product where you can actually do that, where you can get a long enough terms and you can actually sell it, or you can do pre-orders or things like that, right? So, um, yeah, so I think that's one of the big pitfalls is not getting that visibility and understanding like, where cash is going and things like that, because e-commerce in itself is a very capital intensive business. And I don't think people realize that from the beginning because it starts out, oh, I sold 100K this month. Great. And then they're like, oh, well, I'm going to sell 200K next month. And I gotta buy another $100,000 worth of inventory. And then they don't know where that cash is going to come from. Right. And then they go and they borrow it. And then that continues. They borrow, they borrow, they borrow. And then too many other aspects in the business start to taper off. And then if things go the opposite direction, now you're in a ton of debt and now you're in trouble. So we want to build that up. Like we don't want to stop any growth, but we want to build it up responsibly and understand where it's going to go.
Mm. That's some good stuff that I think a lot of people really haven't thought of. I start out with my initial inventory, I sell it. This is great, but then I need more inventory. This means I need the
Mm-hmm.
money, and I actually need more inventory than I had initially because I've created the demand. And I think a lot of people haven't probably worked that through, worked the numbers through. This course sounds fantastic for anyone who is considering at all a venture into the e-commerce space. And I agree. Like and I'm sure I'm not unique because of my profession and because I work with service providers. My social media feed is full of people that are touting how easy it would be to create an Amazon store, right? And
Yeah.
again, this is one of those things like we're not contemplating margins, and so they're marketing on the pain of, and then they're like, oh, it's so easy, you could just do this. And I think that Greg shines a light on a lot of the elements and aspects of this that we haven't thought about. Now, that's not to discourage anybody, because I think that
No.
for the majority of our listeners, this could be a tremendous, tremendous opportunity if it's done right. Greg, tell us how we can gain access to the course so that we can edify ourselves and learn how to get
For
set up
sure.
properly.
Yeah. So the course is rapidrevenueblueprint.com. You can also go to, my personal website, which is Gregm as in Michael Wilson .com. That'll kind of link you to that. You can also check out Precision Financial and, grab my email or whatever. We can put it in the notes. Feel free to help anybody out that's interested in that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but and a lot of these guys that tout that you can make a bunch of money in e-commerce, and a lot of times all they do is show their top line gross sales, right? Like, oh yeah, I generated $100,000. You generated $100,000 in revenue, but you made nothing, right? And there's a lot of people that are making money off of selling other courses about like how to set up a store and make money, but like there's nobody that I know about there, which is why I wanted to do this, that is actually explaining like, oh, how do you actually make it successful? Right? It's like anybody can set up a store and like start putting products on there and put a bunch of marketing behind it, and you'll see dollars come in your bank account, but you might not be actually taking home anything at the end of the day. So how do we take it home? How do we take home some dollars and then actually build something? And then if you're really lucky and you do it right, how do you have an exit of 8 figures or more, and go and do it again?
So Myron Golden says that poor-minded people will spend a lot of time in an effort to save a little money, while rich-minded people will spend a lot of money in an effort to save a little time. What about the people that are like, listen, Greg, I love it. I love you. I don't want the course. What else you got? Do you have opportunities to coach with you, work directly with you? Do you hold people's hands to help them to get this going?
I do, yeah. So I do have kind of a mentorship community that I'm building. So one of the things with the accounting firm is I'm mostly business development and advisory, right? I was CFO of, probably over 100 businesses now. And I don't like the day to day routine work, but I really like helping people understand their business. So if people are in a position where like, I just like, I don't get what's not working here. I think my numbers are screwed up, or like, I just need somebody to look at this stuff. This is what I'm really good at. I can look at a set of financial statements and I can probably tell you what's wrong within 30 minutes. And I'm like, my superpower is understanding very complex situations and breaking them down very simply. And so, that's what I really love doing for people. And then through that, using my network and helping people find the right people to solve their problems. So yeah, I do that. I do have kind of a personal one-on-one coaching that I'm doing. And then kind of spoiler is another thing I'm working on is kind of a success wealth building group as well. So people that are kind of high net worth individuals, information into like tax strategies and how to build some serious wealth investments and things like that. So that's an area we didn't touch on, but have a lot of investments and things like that to help people reach financial freedom as well. So that's kind of the whole goal, the whole gamut of everything all together. So
Absolutely love it. Tons of people can benefit. GregMWilson.com. That seems to be the website where you can then from there get to all of the other cool stuff. Make sure that you
yep.
check him out. We'll put the other websites in the show notes. We want you to get connected to Greg. Greg, thanks so much for dropping in and sharing your knowledge and your passion with so many people. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Shawn. This is great. Appreciate you a ton. Thanks so much.
Well, all right, everybody. What a phenomenal show. I hope you learned something new. I hope that you are inspired and encouraged. I think that a few of you need to venture out into that e commerce space. And I truly hope that you'll reach out to Greg because he is someone that can help you to accelerate that learning curve, get you to your destination even faster because he's lived it, breathed it, and he's helped many others like you to reach their goals with their e commerce business. He can help you through everything from getting started all the way to the end point of an exit. And how sweet would that be? Hope that you will apply these concepts and get moving on them right away. That's the only way that it will work. I've never seen anybody launch $100 million e-commerce business by listening to a podcast. You're going to have to take some action and reach out to Greg, and then you're going to have to take some action to get it done. All right, folks, that's it for this week. We'll be back again next week with a brand new edition of the None of Your Business podcast.